another this is a bit of a funny start to our discussion here today, because as we press the button to start our broadcast, everything seems to have crashed. So, Jaco, Josh, and Marcus, can you hear me?
Yes, no, perfectly, Christoph.
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, and our
Yes,
Talking
100%.
Social Enterprise discussion of today is also on the Google Hangout system recording now. So the initial little glitch that we had there with the internet connection is luckily sorted out. But welcome everyone that's joining in today in the discussion. This is the third of our Talking Social Enterprise shows that we hosted. In fact, Jaco, Marcus, and myself were sitting in a coffee shop in Observatory in Cape Town, talking about what we can do to create a space for social entrepreneurs to share their experiences, and in that way get better at what they do, increase the impact that they have, run better businesses or NPOs, depending on what the nature is of the organization, and in the end, of course, also have great fun in doing that. So the format of this Hangout, this is the platform that we use, is Google Hangouts, is pretty informal. We try to make it a space where we invite someone who's got some insights in terms of how they found running a social enterprise is. And specifically today we've got Josh on the call. Now later on, or just now, Marcus will be talking to Josh about his experiences in trademark and what the learnings are from that. But Marcus also has been able to systemize, I could say, the thinking around what helps social entrepreneurs in his ebook, and the topics that we cover in here are in fact all based on what Marcus has found. So, Marcus, can you quickly tell us what this ebook is about and how the different topics that you've put together in the ebook comes together and how we're covering it? By the way, it's also been covered in Small Business Connect, the newspaper, on a monthly basis, or on the website smallbusinessconnect.co.za. So it's interesting to go read about previous people covered there on the internet too. But Marcus, can you quickly explain to us how this came about and what the thinking behind the ebook and the ideas in there are?
Well, it actually started about 14 years ago, and I started consulting to nonprofit organizations, and I noticed that all the very successful ones seemed to be doing something that was, they were doing 10 things that were pretty much ahead of their time. And way back then, I called them new rules for nonprofit organizations. And eventually, in about 2003, 2004, I noticed that what they're actually talking about is a social enterprise, and the type of thinking that a social enterprise does. So then, in later versions of these principles, I started calling them principles and not rules. And I realized that there were these 10 things that they all did that everyone could apply, if they're a social enterprise or not a social enterprise, it didn't matter, they could apply it. And if they did, it would radically change the way they thought about the organizations. And because of that, they would get much better results, much better financial results, and much better social impact. So nowadays, it's real value is saying there's two parts to a social enterprise. There's the paradigm, and that's captured in those 10 principles, and there's the business model, which is how it earns its money. And there are a lot of organizations that it's just not appropriate for them to adopt your traditional social enterprise business model. But applying these principles will still be very appropriate and will make a big difference. So the purpose of the show is to look at each of these principles in depth and find someone that exemplifies a principle and really get them to share their story. So today we've got Josh Cox here, and who's the director of Trademark, and we'll be chatting to him a bit later. And Trademark has done exceptional work and is a really brilliant example of the fourth principle in the series. But let me not give too many secrets away for now, and just hand back to Christoph, who's hosted the show, and we'll get back to my section a bit later. Christoph?
So is that my job?
Yes.
That was like an intimidating one. But yeah, so what we try to do in the show is to also bring some elements of news and opportunities in it. And Jaco, being the networker and marketer that he is, always knows about everything that's happening. So we'll chat to him just now about upcoming events and noteworthy opportunities, I could say. And then my challenge would be towards the end of the show to see if there's kind of something interesting from a coaching perspective that we can add into the mix too. Perhaps something that links into what Josh has found in working for him. So without further ado, Jaco, can I ask you, sort of what's up and what are social entrepreneurs about to explore and do out there?
Sure, thanks a lot, Christoph. Well, as you guys might know, next month is Global Entrepreneurship Week, and that's kind of the big thing that's coming up for November. It's happening. It starts on the 17th of November. It's, as you might know, a sort of global phenomena. It's being pushed by the Kaufman Foundation, and there are events literally happening in just about every major city on the planet during that week. Especially in South Africa, there are, I think, about 11 or so different things that are going to be going down, and they vary from the Entrepreneur Expo and Conference in Cape Town to the Innovation Festival up in Pretoria to an entire entrepreneurs training marathon happening in Johannesburg. I'm not going to list all of the events that are happening because there's just too many to mention in a short show like this. But what I'll do is, as per usual, we'll paste some information on our Facebook page and on our website. And you can have a squiz there at the GW website, and they've got an entire listing of all the events and all the different activities that are happening around Global Entrepreneurship Week. It is the biggest week of entrepreneurship around the planet, so it's definitely something to keep your eyes on. And there's going to be tons of support being available for social entrepreneurs and conventional entrepreneurs during this space. I mean, it's not just confined to social entrepreneurs, but fortunately there is a lot of innovation and social entrepreneurship activity happening around GEW. The next section that's important to mention is the Managing Money course that's happening this Thursday and Friday at Impact Hub Johannesburg. We mentioned it last month in our previous show. It's a financial training course that covers a massively broad segments from pricing and cost structure all the way through to cash management and preparing financial statements, how to become investment ready. So it's a pretty broad and very in-depth financial trainings program. The training's valued at about 2,000 Rand, but thanks to some scholarships and some creative funding, they've been able to drop that price down to about 200 Rand per participant. It's this Thursday and Friday, so the timing is short, but I know that they've still got a few gaps open. So if you are interested in attending, I definitely advise that you guys have a look at that. And then lastly, it seems that social entrepreneurship has woken up. Yeah.
Are you recording or posting or putting this information somewhere for us to see if we are interested?
Everything's going on our Talking Social Enterprise Facebook page, and you'll also be able to find all of the info on the Talking Social Enterprise website, which I'll give you guys the URL as soon as we're done.
Okay, great.
So the last section is acceleration programs, and there have actually been a number of acceleration programs popping up. It seems that, being that time of the year, as spring sort of arrives in South Africa, it seems that the social entrepreneurial space just entirely wakes up again, sort of blooms, looking for social entrepreneurs to sort of pollinate ideas between each other. And there are three major programs that I'm going to mention here. Some of you might already be aware of the Green Pioneer Acceleration Program being hosted by Impact Amplifier and VC for Africa. That's a big one that's looking at specifically social entrepreneurs operating in Kenya and South Africa. They are looking for sort of post-revenue social enterprises that are looking to scale, as well as get investment ready. The program, I think, is a good couple of weeks. It's pretty intense, and they're specifically looking for guys operating within the green economy. So if you've got a greening project, or if you've got a renewable or clean energy project, or an environmental protection project, or anything in that regard, if that's your focus area, this is the kind of program that you want to join. The next one is by Spark International. This one is also happening in South Africa as well as in Kenya. But this is a very intense one-week program that's being offered in the beginning of January. They're looking for 15 social entrepreneurs in South Africa and then 15 in Kenya. The South African leg is playing off in Johannesburg. I'm not exactly sure what the location is in Johannesburg, but I'm pretty sure on application you'll get all of those details. It's a very open acceleration program. It's pretty broad, so it's open to any early stage startup that's looking to just spend a week of really intensely working on their program, on their business. And fortunately, there's also 2 years of business support after the acceleration program. So for the next 2 years, you'll have free legal support. There'll be a variety of business managers that you can speak to, mentors, as well as obviously just the network itself between the participants. And then the last one is actually quite a big one. It's the Social Entrepreneurship Forum based in Sweden, who's also putting together, I think this is the third one of their 8-week acceleration program. It's open to anyone on the planet, and it's a full-service accelerator. It takes you pretty much all the way from the basics of writing a business plan all the way through to the more complex matters of properly measuring impact and preparing for investment. As I mentioned, it's open to anybody around the planet, any social venture, any social business, could be a for-profit or a non-profit entity. The real key factor here is just impact and potential scalability. The program covers all costs, including airfares, accommodation, visas, stipends for your time there, travel allowances. So it's really well funded. And from what I've heard in the last 2 programs, there's been a good amount of feedback from many of the participants. And I'm not sure if there haven't been any South African participants to this, but I know some of the Swedish guys that have participated in it, and they were tremendously impressed by it. So yeah, that's pretty much the big news that's coming up. If you keep your eye on our Facebook page, you'll get all of this information, as well as throughout the month. What I'll do is I'll start consistently updating other opportunities that are available throughout the month that we don't necessarily mention on the show itself. But yeah, just basically keep an eye on our Facebook page and keep an eye on our website, and you'll stay in the loop on what's happening. Back to you, Christoph. I think you're still muted, Christoph.
Great, thanks. I'll call that the generation gap. It's nothing as ridiculous as speaking to yourself. So yeah, I was sitting the other day. Thanks for that, Jaco. I was sitting the other day with someone talking about how it was when we started off in business 15 or so odd years ago. In terms of the entrepreneurship space in general, not necessarily the social enterprise space. In fact, in that point in time, there was no one really in South Africa talking about social entrepreneurship. It was much more a case of it was all new for the whole project of entrepreneurship as such, sort of as opposed to social enterprise. And how the landscape has shifted, sort of. So, in fact, we are living in a fortunate era, sort of. I was today at the solution space at the Day School of Business, sort of also a new initiative to create support for people that are in the innovation and social enterprise space. So there are lots. There's so much of support and opportunities available out there nowadays that really it is inexcusable to do something of interest and of impact. So having said that, what have you guys, just before we run into Josh and Marcus talking a bit more detail about what they found works and don't work in social entrepreneurship, what have you guys otherwise been up to? Sort of if those are the upcoming events, anything of interest that has come your paths in the past week or so? Marcus and Josh too?
Okay, yeah, I can.
By all means, you go first, Marcus.
Okay, now I'm particularly looking forward to the results of the whole Social Innovation Awards at SAB. So I was chatting to one of the people who were shortlisted today, EcoBrick, and they were talking about how they're looking forward to the event. I must say, I've met all the participants, or all the shortlisted people. I'm very, very curious to see who actually wins it. So that's definitely the thing I'm looking forward to the most. And Jaco?
Sorry, Marcus, before you
Yes.
go, so there were kind of interesting cases that caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was most impressed by the beekeeper, basically. One of the projects had designed this plastic beekeeping hive, essentially, that was pretty much weatherproof, extremely well insulated, could essentially have beekeeping business in a bee box, in a beehive. And there were a variety of models for people in very rural areas to make a good living from it. So, I mean, that's where my money's on, but we'll see who wins.
Right. Okay. Sorry, Marcus. Sorry, Jaco, for interrupting you.
No trouble. Yeah, I think the most exciting thing that I've seen in the last couple of weeks was the last hookup dinner that I went to. I'm not sure if you guys know about the hookup dinner, but it's basically part networking event, part pitching platform for not just social entrepreneurs, but just anybody involved in the entrepreneurial space. Lots of young startup businesses. The hookup dinner itself is actually, I think, also one of the winners of a prior award at the SAB Foundation from a couple of years ago, and they're still massively sponsored and supported by SAB. But the hookup dinner is great because it happens usually in Cape Town, Johannesburg, I think in Durban as well. I think it's 3 or 4 cities that it happens in, with live feeds between all of the cities, and you know, you can sort of see all the pitches happening all around the country. And it's very exciting to see social entrepreneurship and conventional entrepreneurship sort of starting to share many of the same platforms. I think in many extents, social entrepreneurship having come to a great degree in South Africa out of the non-profit space, there's still not quite a great dovetail with the conventional entrepreneurship space. But things like the hookup dinner and so on they're sort of removing that line between the two, where you see a lot more social innovators, social entrepreneurs, conventional entrepreneurs, and nonprofits starting to sort of operate in the same space. And that's quite exciting. I quite like that idea because I think there's a lot that they can learn from each other, even if they don't necessarily approach things in the same way. I think there are still a lot of elements coming out of that. Also know that coming up during Grow Entrepreneurship Week, there's a big thing happening with the hookup dinner. And also, they're also involved with the Entrepreneurship Expo happening at the River Club during that Global Entrepreneurship Week. So I definitely say anybody that's got the opportunity to join one of the hookup dinners, pop in. It's great. There's drinks and food and a lot of great networking opportunities and really good conversation and some really exciting pitches. I think that's one of the things that excite me the most, is to see sort of young entrepreneurs that aren't just talking about stuff, but actually making it happen. And especially when guys are pitching and they're already sort of a year into operations, you know, they've been doing this, they kind of know what they need, they really understand what they're there for, and what they're trying to achieve. And that's really exciting, as opposed to just somebody going up with a great idea, but no real sort of track record behind it. So I think that's quite exciting.
And Jaco, your comments just remind me of a focus group that we facilitated about 3 months ago, and in Woodstock. Do you recall where we were doing a strategy for the Western Cape government? So we had a group with normal, conventional entrepreneurs, and just to contrast their opinion with social entrepreneurs. And they had the same energy, they had the same enthusiasm, they were experiencing pretty much the same difficulties, and they had some great insights.
Yeah, and I definitely think that any opportunity to facilitate that conversation between the two will help them understand that many of their challenges are the same. I mean, just because you're a conventional, and we use the term conventional very, very loosely here. There's nothing conventional about an entrepreneur. But I think it's important to just distinguish them at this stage from social entrepreneurs for our purposes. But nonetheless, the challenges that they face are so similar. You know, whether these be funding challenges or whether they be developing creative models in how they approach selling their product and how they approach their markets. I think it's really exciting.
Because at the heart of it, social enterprise is a business.
True as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So the principles of running a successful social enterprise isn't necessarily that much different from running a successful other entrepreneurial business. In fact, workshop that I did on Friday at one of the incubators here in Cape Town. I started off with a slide of Richard Branson and his quote saying that the existing right of any business has to do with it offering something that makes a big difference in the lives of the people it serves. Sort of said, now what's the difference between that, which I want to say is the wisdom of a conventional entrepreneur, with enterprise. So it is a kind of interesting trend that distinction between business as usual and what people describe themselves as social entrepreneurs is perhaps getting a bit more fuzzy in the business space. Sort of now, of course, in the not-for-profit space, there's clear distinction, a line that is not overcomable. Sort of. So, would you say that in that sense, sort of from in this discussion and from your experiences, that the distinction between a social enterprise that's a non-for-profit as opposed to one that's a business is significant in what works and what doesn't work?
In mind, when looking at what is a social enterprise, and sometimes it's impossible to tell what the legal form is, whether it's got a for-profit legal form or a non-profit at the base. I mean, a good example is Green Pop that we're going to be interviewing in a couple months. Green Pop's a very, very successful environmental campaign business that is a for-profit entity. It just runs pretty much like it runs as a social business or a social enterprise. So I don't think, I think this idea of a business or a non-profit are going to become a bit archaic over time. And I think in the future we'll look at an enterprise and we say, what does it do and how does it do it? And use that as our method of judging, and as opposed to this quite old-fashioned distinction that everyone still uses.
Okay, great. So before we digress too much, Josh, is there something of interest that's come over your path in the past week or so? And remember to press unmute, not like me speak into the void.
Yeah, thanks, Christoph. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. So they had a BOP learning lab at the Solution Space at the GSB. Those are organized and hosted by Reciprocity. And this particular project was called Corner Cafe, and they're really looking at developing a business in a box where entrepreneurs in the township communities can set up these ICT centers that give kids particularly, but also just anyone in the community, access to ICT services. And I just found the detail that they went into around how their model works and how they are rolling this out, some of the challenges that they're facing. I found it inspiring and just be very useful in terms of seeing how some of their experience and what it is that they're trying to do, how that kind of relates to what it is that we're trying to do. So even though they're in a very different sector, I think there's huge value that can be gained from hearing people's story and hearing what it is that they're trying to do. So those are fairly regular events, I think, and definitely worthwhile going. I try and get to those as often as possible.
So that's at the University of Cape Town, Graduate School of Business?
Correct, yeah, at the Solution Space.
So what is the main thing that you gain from investing your time and going to such events?
Yeah, I guess for me it's really I'm very, particularly at the moment, I'm very focused on looking at our model and some of the systems that we use, because I think the secret to scalability lies in how robust your model is and how robust your systems are. So I'm always trying to glean information from projects, particularly projects that are more either social enterprise or straight businesses, to see how I can glean some information around their systems, around their model, how they package it, and particularly around businesses that are scaling as as franchises or as social franchises. So for me, I guess that's really the big value for me, is just to inform my thinking around social franchising or franchising and how we package this thing so that it can really become scalable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a nice introduction, Marcus. I suppose I don't need to say anything more. So the topic of our discussion, Marcus, is exactly that, isn't it?
Yes, no, we're talking a lot about, in fact, we're going to get a lot of advice from Josh today. And so, yes, and Christoph, should I go ahead?
Yes, yeah, please. So if you can, yeah, I'll sign out from here and listen carefully, because I think I'm going to learn a thing or two as well.
No, same here, definitely. Looking forward to this. So Josh, this is the last slot of the show, and it's my pleasure to welcome Josh Cox, who's over here from Trademark, to the Talking Social Enterprise show this evening. And I've known Josh for about 2 years, and I've always enjoyed his sort of enthusiasm, his willingness to learn, and his new approach of doing things. So we're going to be finding out a bit more about that this evening. And just a very, very brief introduction for what is Trademark. So Trademark is a social enterprise that Josh founded in 2007. It is an online marketplace that connects experienced tradesmen or artisans in the townships with customers, which may be small businesses, it might be suburban households. But let's get Josh to tell the story. So, Josh, perhaps we could start by talking a bit about the beginnings of Trademark. Yeah. And I understand that it was inspired by your friend Simon from Diepsloot, I think it was, which is a township up in Gauteng. And perhaps you could tell us a bit more about the story that led up to the actual formation of Trademark.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it was back in 2007, as you say, and I was living up in Joburg. I was working in the non-profit sector, sort of focused on social development. But a short while prior to that, I'd run a paving franchise of my uncle's business, making paving bricks. And the foreman who was working for me was this guy Simon, and we became really good friends and used to hang out a lot. I used to go there on weekends to Diepsloot and just hang out with him and his friends. And he was very skilled as an artisan, as a painter and a tiler and a paver. Super reliable guy, really good at his work, and was able to deliver a very high quality professional service. And I would, just in spending time with him, obviously got to learn how things were going in his business, and he faced a number of challenges around growing his business, around lack of credibility. People didn't trust him. He didn't really have resources to get the word out there to reach the marketplace of predominantly, the more sort of affluent homeowners as well as businesses, as you say. And one day he actually approached me and said, I've done some work for you, Josh. Would you mind just writing me a reference letter, make me a couple of business cards with your name on as a reference? And he went off with those very simple tools and ended up securing pretty significant contracts, 40,000 Rand contracts, just with a little bit of added credibility, someone to vouch for him and as a professional service provider. And in fact, to this day, he still uses that letter to go out and get business. I'm not sure what shape it's in. It's probably pretty raggedy, but yeah, he's still using those tools. And it just occurred to me one night driving away after spending time with him and hearing that there were so many other people that he knew that were facing similar challenges, and I just thought, what if I could be doing this for more people? And I think so often I come across social entrepreneurs, and this is how the idea starts. It starts with one experience that you have with one individual or a certain situation, and there's a light goes on, and you just think, what if this one experience could be multiplied and could be replicated and could benefit other people? So yeah, that's that, and it's been quite a journey since then. But yeah, we're now finally up and running. I'm working on it full time since February this year, and absolutely loving it.
Oh, that's excellent. It's always nice to hear a story like this. And so, what would you say the purpose of Trademark is? I mean, if you could, just in a sentence or two, very clearly explain it. And you know me, I always challenge everyone on this for this question.
Yes, yeah. So we're essentially about two things, right? We are wanting to create opportunities for our tradesmen, from the townships, to realize business success and also personal transformation. And the way that we do that, the business success, is through providing access to the market. So we go out and promote our tradesmen under the trademark brand, and then we also do business and life skills training, and that helps with the business as well as the sort of personal development side of things.
Okay, thanks.
So it's more than one sentence.
That's perfect. That's clear. I just want to see that people are not using too much jargon to explain what they're doing. And talk a bit about tradesmen. So you said that your friend Simon, they just needed someone to vouch for them. And given, I gather firstly that there's quite a few, or must be hundreds of thousands of experienced tradesmen that are struggling to work. And I'm also assuming that there's more than just a lack of someone to vouch for them that's acting as a barrier in their businesses. And perhaps you could just give me your thoughts on that.
In terms of what the other challenges that they
what some of the other challenges are, and then how big do you think this problem is in South Africa?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem. I think we sit with a legacy from pre-94 days of divided communities, of breakdown of trust, of no kind of positive social but limited positive social interaction between this sort of more affluent, predominantly white communities and the poorer, mostly black township communities. And so, it's definitely a challenge for really good guys who can provide an amazing service. It's a challenge for them to bridge that gap and to differentiate themselves from. So it's not just around a credibility in terms of trustworthiness and building trust and so on. It's also around, do these individuals have the skills to deliver a high quality service? We've got our tradesmen are working in housing estates on 4-5 million rand houses. Now, not every guy that stands on the side of the road, even those that you can trust, have the level of skill where they're able to do that. So it's for these guys, how do they differentiate themselves from the hundreds of thousands of guys who only have experience as laborers, who need supervision, who are not going to be proactive, who are not going to be confident in engaging with clients when there are issues and so on. So those are just some of the kind of characteristics that we're looking for, and then we put these guys out there as having those characteristics. So it's not just around the trustworthiness, it's around the skills and so on. So it's kind of bridging that gap, and then at the same time, there's also these guys are first and foremost artisans. Their expertise lies very much in their trade. Most of them come from a background of having, perhaps spent some time working for a company, for a contractor, and then they either got laid off or they decided to go it alone. So their expertise is not so much in running a business, but more in their trade. So that's also a big gap that or a big challenge that they face, and that's where we come in with the training, partnering with the business place out in the Philippines, offering that training around how to run a business, how to set goals and realize those goals and so on.
Okay, so definitely when I last spoke to you, you were exploring training institutions to help.
Yeah.
You hadn't found something, so it's good that you found the business place.
Yeah.
Because they've got a lot of credibility, and I think they've just a whole bunch of research has just been done on the impact, and it's shown very positive results.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So how many tradesmen does Trademark have in its books at the moment?
At the moment, they're just 16 tradesmen, so we're still quite small. We see ourselves as, even though we've been going for some years, we see ourselves as still being quite a young organization, I guess, or business. So it's still quite small, and we're looking at taking on the second cohort of tradesmen for the Cape Town area from the beginning of next year, and then looking to, I think we're going to talk about it later, but looking to expand up to Joburg as well. So we've got plans to grow it, but at the moment it's just the 16.
Do you get lots of applicants, a lot of tradesmen wanting to be listed in your books?
Yeah, I think as we've become more well known in the communities, as we've got some exposure through the local newspapers in Khayelitsha and some of the Cape Flats communities, there definitely has been a growing interest from tradesmen contacting us. And yeah, I mean, I even had a guy who wanted to set up a car wash contacting me. So we get lots of really interesting inquiries, and our sort of immediate. We don't, even into our recruitment process, we don't just take anyone that shows an interest. We put the responsibility back to them, and ask that if they cold contact us, then we say, okay, go to one of your previous clients and ask them to refer you on our website.
Okay,
and we found that to be quite effective as a kind of a pre-screening process.
Oh, definitely. So let's say I live in Rondebosch and I'm looking to get someone to pay my driveway for me. And what must I do? I must log into your website.
Yeah.
And what will I see? Perhaps you could just talk me through your website from more of a customer perspective.
Sure.
How will I find someone? How will I know that I can trust them? How will I rate their quality? I mean, how does the thing work?
Yeah. So we're trying to just on the website we're trying to get the balance right between going kind of pure digital and everything automated. We're trying to get the balance right between that, and that's obviously seamless and it's easy and we can handle high volumes. But at the same time, we feel that certainly in South Africa, people are not completely comfortable engaging purely in digital. So people want to know, they want to have a voice on the end of the phone. So we're trying to get that balance right. So the first port of call would definitely be to go to our website. On our homepage, there's a basic job inquiry form where you give details of the job, what particular trade you're looking for, and so on. That would come through. Then the next contact would be a phone call. So immediately there's that personal kind of interaction and engagement, and we would get more details, check the urgency of the job. We would then see which tradesman is available, making sure that looking at the kind of geographical location, as well as ensuring that we can spread the workers evenly amongst the tradesmen as possible. So that's our kind of criteria for deciding who would get the next contract. And then we would pass the customer's details on to the tradesman and the tradesman's details on to the customers, and they would connect, and they take that conversation forward. And we jump in really only at 2 points. One is to moderate the quote. Unless it's a tiny job that's going to take an afternoon. For a slightly bigger job, we would work through that quotation process with the tradesman. Certainly, at this stage, we obviously have plans so that the tradesmen no longer require that. And then the second thing is, once the job is complete, we get get feedback from the client. We've got quite a detailed feedback form that we ask them to fill in, that we can get a rating for the tradesman, and we can obviously share that feedback with the tradesmen so that they can learn and grow and improve and so on. But that doesn't sit on the website as yet, the feedback form.
So website's more for the profiles of the people, and it's a booking platform. And there's definitely a human element you've got behind the website. Yeah,
definitely. I think we're quite big on trying to get a human into the into the process quite quickly, because it requires very limited interaction. So we don't go and meet with a client. We don't go and inspect the job ourselves. We're not doing any of that. So it's literally a simple telephone conversation, but it's an important one. We feel, just in terms of being able to reassure the client and ask them or answer any questions that they have. So yeah.
Okay, no thanks. That makes a lot of sense. And I just want to talk now a bit about outcomes. And so how do you track your progress? I mean, I'm assuming there's a handful of social outcomes that you're aiming for, and that you use to sort of judge whether you're on course and you're heading in the right direction and things are moving forward. So what would you say those are? What do you monitor in your radar system?
Yeah, so our I guess they're different levels, and they're also there are outcomes that are easy to measure, that are more quantifiable than others. So we're not sort of limiting ourselves to,
but let's say
to a
3 or 4 things.
to a particular outcome. Sorry.
Okay. Let's say 3 or 4 things that you use in your radar system.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
judge your
So I mean,
progress.
yeah. So we obviously we're looking at, how much business is coming in for the tradesmen, not inquiries, how much converted business is coming in.
Okay.
We're looking at what are the ratings that our tradesmen are getting as an indicator of their performance, which translates to our ability to find quality tradesmen. So that's a good indicator for that. We are obviously looking at the number of tradesmen that we support, as well as the number of individuals that they in turn employ for the work. So we're trying to get a sense of the impact on the number of individuals, as well as the kind of the financial, and then the rating that would give us a sense of whether we're on track. We very quickly pick up if there's an issue that needs to be addressed, if a particular tradesman requires a bit of support, to improve the quality of their service.
And Josh, I just see a question here from Laura Berg, who's on the chat function. She's curious, how do you know if you're moving the needle of transformation, she says.
Yeah, good question. So we're looking, over the last couple of months, we've really been reflecting on trying to understand what is at the core of what we're really trying to do, because those things, the measurables, even when we've measured them, haven't necessarily been well correlated with the ultimate aim that we're trying to achieve, and that's really to see people move out of a situation of poverty, to see the quality of their lives, their families, and those they employ. We want to see that improving. And interestingly, we found we made an assumption that for that to happen, our tradesmen just needed to earn more income. Their business needed to be generating more revenue, and that would translate from the material needs side, that would translate into a better quality of life. And we found that wasn't the case. And so now we've started to actually drill deeper and trying to look at putting measures in place where we can actually measure what that transformation is. And one of the tools that we've been using for that with the 16 tradesmen now, where we've taken a baseline, is this amazing tool called the Poverty Stoplight, where it looks at 50 different indicators of poverty, and each of the tradesmen goes through kind of a baseline survey on that, and they would understand for each of these 50 indicators, we would assess, are they red, so in dire poverty, are they orange in poverty, or green, free from poverty on this particular indicator. So it might be, access to water, for instance, would be one of those indicators. So we're looking at using that as a tool to really assist us in understanding what is the actual, when we drill down into it, what is the transformation that's taking place. And it's great because it doubles as a tool that the tradesmen can use to set goals around these particular indicators. So they might say, okay, for the next year, when you come back and do this, I want to have moved from green to orange on these 5 indicators, or from orange to green on these 4 indicators. So it breaks it down, and it makes the journey out of poverty manageable, because you're tackling things in kind of bite-sized chunks instead of just being overwhelmed by, I want to improve my life, but where do I even start? So it's a fantastic tool, and we're very excited to be using it.
No, this is excellent news. I just hope more people follow your example in this and really measure their progress properly, as opposed to just output indicators all the time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We just need to move on a bit and talk about income, okay, the business side of things. And So I understand that your model is designed to be a social enterprise model, but at the moment you're reliant on a number of grants while you set things up.
Mm-hmm.
And is that how it's working at the moment?
That is, yeah. So we've been very fortunate to get some funding from excuse me, from the Industrial Development Corporation, which has really just given us the space to, again, as I was saying earlier, to focus on getting the model right. I think a lot of social enterprises struggle to gain forward momentum because they have to be earning almost from day one. And while we are earning, we're a long way from covering our costs, and we're not worried about it because at this stage, because we have that funding in place to see us through these first couple of years and to allow us to really focus on getting the model right, because this thing is only going to support itself when it's operating at scale. So if we're going to be adding even a new branch every year, it's going to be 15 years before this thing can support it, before trademark can support itself. So we're wanting to, instead of running that approach, we wanting to say, okay, well, let's take the next 2 to 3 years, let's get the model right. We don't have a lot of pressure to raise funds to generate revenue ourselves. We're covered in that regard. Let's focus on getting the model right. And if we do that, and if we can structure this thing as a social franchise, then it can mushroom.
Yes.
So we may have 2 branches by the end of next year. We might have 15 by the end of the following year. That's the growth that we're looking at.
But this is still a very important point. A lot of people make the assumption that social enterprises need to earn 100% of their own income from day one, whereas a lot of social enterprises, although they do the majority of their income in that way, benefit certainly from grants, particularly with R&D and that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so with this IDC grant, it's 2.5 million, wasn't it, that you got?
Correct. Yeah.
And I understand they've got an unusual method, the Industrial Development Corporation Social Enterprise Fund, of funding people. Something about loans versus convertible into donations. How does that work? What's the arrangement with you?
Yeah. So I think it's a great arrangement. It's structured as a grant, but there's a very high degree of accountability. And so if they're not if we don't reach certain milestones that we've agreed upon with them, that's in our contract, then that support dries up. So I think it's great. It puts pressure on us, and I think that's what you want as a social enterprise. I think, if you're safe and you don't really have to deliver, then you're not really going to grow. So I like the fact that it keeps us on our toes. If we don't meet those deliverables, then we will essentially have to pay back that money.
Yes.
So it's interesting. It's kind of somewhere in the middle of a grant and a
loan.
loan.
It's a loan that's written converted to a grant if you achieve certain objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've found that they've been very reasonable in they want us to succeed. So they've been, and obviously when you're setting out a plan for the next 5 years, not everything's going to go according to plan, and things might take a slightly different direction. And we've found them to be incredibly reasonable in understanding the journey that we're going through, and buying into the approach that we're taking when a particular deliverable on the surface perhaps seems like we haven't met it. They've been very accommodating, but at the same time, not sort of letting us off the hook. We've had to account for why we've taken a slightly different direction, or the timelines have shifted slightly. So,
because I know them very well, and they're certainly a very competent and passionate team at the IDC there behind the fund.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so since 2007, so that's about 7 years you've been working at Trademark.
Yeah.
And you must have had a whole variety of challenges. I mean, I can't imagine everything has been easy. Can you think of one challenge that really, could have made or break trademark, and you managed to sort of overcome and get on top of it, that perhaps you could share with us?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like there's not one sort of standout obstacle that we kind of overcame in a moment where something really came through for us. For me, I think when I think back on the journey, I think the biggest challenge has been which at the same time, and I'll explain in a moment, has I think also been a great advantage to us. The biggest challenge has been the slow way in which we've progressed in getting to where we are now. It takes a lot of a resilience to stick with an idea after 3-4 years when you're seeing so little progress. It's really been a long journey to get here. But I've definitely had dips. I've had times where I was just hoping that this thing would very obviously fail, and then I could just walk away and get on with my life. Because it really took quite a bit of sacrifice in those early years to keep that momentum up and to keep motivated and so on. So that definitely was a big challenge for us. It really reached a point where it almost came to a halt, and then we connected with LiveCo Unlimited South Africa, previously Unlimited South Africa, and that really breathed new life into the journey by connecting us with a mentor, giving us a startup grant. So things kind of started picking up from there. But it was definitely a huge challenge for us, or for me personally, to be working on this thing for so many years without seeing a lot of progress, and having to make a lot of sacrifices along the way. And then just very quickly, where I think that's played to our advantage is that we have been very thoughtful. We've had time to really think and process and reflect on the way we do things. We haven't been rushed by donors or investors to deliver on things. We've had a lot of time with not huge kind of outside pressure to really make sure that we get this thing right. So we've had failures while we've been small, and they haven't been as costly as if we were growing rapidly, and we were so we weren't too. I think you can also be. You can have like a false start if you're too quick out the gates, and you don't have that time to learn and reflect. Then I think it can also it can turn into kind of flash in the pan, and then everything collapses. So I think it's been the slow, steady progress has played to our advantage in that way.
So being sort of, and I suppose these are the qualities of a social entrepreneur: to sort of know what you want to achieve, to persist no matter what, to learn along the way, to keep up hope. Yeah. And then gradually things start getting clearer over a space of years. Yeah. And I do agree with you. I've seen so many organizations start really, really rapidly, get big ideas, which is great, but run before they can walk. Yeah. I've seen them sort of land in severe trouble. Yeah. So you've given us some really valuable advice here. And if we think about, there certainly are lots of entrepreneurs out there. Young people starting out in their journey, and they've come up with their first idea, the first problem they want to solve. What is your advice for them? So let's say someone matriculates out of school and they want to be a social entrepreneur. That's their dream. What would you tell them?
Yeah, a couple of things that I can think of. I mean, I think for me, if I look back on my journey, I think. Something that has definitely carried us through to the point where we are now has been that fairly early on I got a team around me, and there are pros and cons to that, but I think that getting people who buy into your vision, who can support you, who can provide advice, who can bring new skills, even if they're not formally working on the project, but just get input from a diverse range of people, get people behind you. Like definitely in the times where I was demotivated and we weren't seeing progress, that's when the other team members really carried me through, and they said, you know what, don't worry about it. We're going to work this thing out. We're going to overcome this challenge that we're facing. So definitely team members, getting team members around you, people who can support you and buy into and work with you, definitely helps carry you.
And these aren't necessary staff you're talking about.
No, not at all, not at all. So yeah, no, I'm not talking about staff. I'm just talking about, so for me it was, the first person that that I kind of teamed up with was just a friend and a colleague who said, you know what, I love the vision of what it is that you're doing. Pull me in. How can I get involved? No expectation of employment. No, they're now a trustee, but that wasn't their intention in the beginning. They just wanted to get involved in doing something cool that they saw value in. So definitely team is crucial, I'd say. And then do your planning, do your homework, look around, see what else is out there, put together, try and write stuff down so you have a kind of a vision of where you want to go that you can refer to, and that obviously changes. So do that kind of homework, do the planning, try and weigh things up. But I'm also a big believer in, at some point you just got to dive in. You just got to try stuff. You got to try stuff. You got to be prepared that you're going to fail. For me, more important than a perfect plan before you start is a good system of measuring what's working and what's not working. So that having that mindset of constantly seeing, what is, I had this idea of how this was going to work. I tried it. Is it working or isn't it? You got to be able to understand that. And if it's not, then you can kind of embark on a process of trying to understand how you can improve it. So do your planning, do your homework, see who else is doing stuff, see if you can connect with them, learn from them. But at some stage, you just got to dive in. You just got to launch it. You don't need to get funding. You don't need to. I didn't register the organization until just over 2 years ago. We didn't have a lot of funding. We were not formally registered. We didn't have anything fancy in place. We just got stuck in. We got our hands dirty. We started doing the work. That stuff will come. The funding will come. All of the other things that you need in terms of formal registration. Don't worry about that. Just start doing the work, and the rest will follow.
No, definitely. I totally agree with that. I think people are much too quick to start registering stuff and creating bureaucracy for themselves when they're still in the testing ideas. But what you've told us very strongly is the importance of having a radar system. It's being clear about your purpose, having a system for measuring your success, and revising and improving and learning based upon the feedback from that. Yeah,
absolutely. And feedback from others. Some try and look around for people who are critical of your idea. They're going to add the most value before, and probably save you in the kind of conceptualization, the talking about and thinking about. Those people will point out holes before you go out and try and fail. So find people that can be honest, that will be critical, particularly people that have experience, in business or in social enterprise, or who are familiar with what's happening in the sector. Talk to them and look for those critical people that are going to, that are not going to go easy on you. There's having someone say this is a fantastic idea, I think it's going to change the world. That doesn't really add a huge amount of value.
Yes, no, you need someone who's got serious input. And
exactly.
So Josh, just my last question for the evening then is, where do you expect Trademark to be in 5 years' time? Or where do you hope Trademark to be in 5 years' time? Would be a better thing.
Yes, yeah. So we, as I was saying earlier, we're looking at, a couple of things. I mean, we're very focused on getting the model right, we're wanting to structure ourselves as a social franchise so that we can really reach the big scale, not just for our financial sustainability, although that's important, but obviously we want to see the social impact multiplied around the country if possible. So we kind of very focused on getting that right over the next sort of year or two. But we starting up in Johannesburg, opening up what will initially be a branch towards the beginning of next year, and then hopefully with a view to release that branch as a fully fledged social franchise. So we want to, in 5 years' time, I mean, we want to see trademark franchises being established around the country, and we want to be looking beyond South Africa as well. We're already looking at some of the other developing countries, where there's, I think anywhere where there's high levels of income inequality, and you have a sort of a wealthy minority that needs services that are kind of the majority from the poorer communities are able to provide those services, and you need someone to bridge those communities. I think the trademark model could be applied. So we're looking, we're thinking about countries like Brazil, countries like India, that have a similar kind of economic profile to South Africa, that are, economies are growing, and so yeah, we're looking at that, and we're hoping to get an opportunity to, we've sort of entered a competition to potentially pitch this idea to a group of investors in Colombia early next year, for it to potentially roll out in Colombia. So it may be sooner than we think. So yeah, definitely seeing it roll out across South Africa, and then within 5 years, even I would say beyond our borders. That's the vision. That's the dream.
And yeah, I mean, this session has been incredibly insightful. It's really, we need a transcript that we can hand around. And you've shared just so many insights today, and there's so much value for other social entrepreneurs trying to learn from your journey. And so, yeah, for me, this has been such a great conversation, and I really think you're heading the right direction. And I'll see you in 5 years.
Excellent. We'll have the next one in Brazil.
Excellent, definitely. Yeah. So I'll hand over back to Christoph over there.
Yeah. Just to confirm, can you hear me, Marcus?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm technologically challenged tonight. I lost my sound and connection on my other side, so I'm here talking from the enterprise connection. But yes, what the inspiration story. I mean, on all the shows that we've had, each time, sort of on TikTok, and you listen to the social entrepreneur that we have on the show talk, it just becomes so clear that, I mean, there are such
talk up a bit, Christoph.
There are such beautiful people here in South Africa doing such amazing stuff, and that are prepared to so easily share what they've learned, so to say that the trick of getting something done is to just go out there and try stuff, that I've heard Joshua say now, and then to know that there are going to be failures, so that you shouldn't expect that everything is going to fall into place, but manage that failure, don't make that failure stop you in the tracks, rather fail forward, and of course the whole issue of measurable metrics, sort of using some way to guide you in getting better at what you do. So I just, and of course building team, sort of that I heard him say too. So I'm just really inspired by what I heard here tonight, as I'm sure that everyone that listened to the story would be. So, and thank you very much, Marcus, also for guiding the discussion, and getting to the point where it is also possible for people listening to this call to actually get some very pointed tips in terms of what they could do. And ultimately, I suppose that is what we try to achieve with hosting this.
And Christoph, maybe we should just get some feedback from Yaku. So Yaku, what is your any closing thoughts on this, on our discussion?
Well, you know what always captures me, something I particularly take away from this is Josh's idea of start early, fail quickly. I think, often in this space we find entrepreneurs that have a good idea, but it's just not gonna work the way that they're trying to push it into the market. And they sit in pilot phase for 2-3 years, looking for funding, looking for support. But I think a lot of times that support is more somebody to pat them on the back rather than somebody to actually sit down and critically assess how possible is what you want to achieve here, and not to say that we can't achieve the impossible, but we also have to be realistic sometimes about what can be done, what can't be done in the time frame, and given the resources. And I think that's what I like about that sort of lean startup idea as well. In general, is start early, fail quickly, figure out what you're doing wrong, get feedback, adjust, change, shift, move forward. That's really the key thing. As Josh said, stuff will come. The funding will come. The registrations will come. Everything will come as you progress. But the key here is hit the ground hard. Make sure that what you're doing is actually changing anything, is changing people's lives, or is changing the way that things operate. And get into it, because that really is the purpose of what we're trying to achieve here. I mean, that is the intention. And if the intention is right, and the intention has got a lot of focus on it, you know that old saying of, if you build it, they will come. And I think I kind of agree with that ideology there. Build it, and if it's right, they will come. If it's not, and if you fail quickly, then you'll figure out very quickly what you've done wrong. So that's definitely something that stood out for me, and something that I think a lot more entrepreneurs should be taking to heart. As an ex-social entrepreneur that's failed himself in an enterprise, I ran a guerrilla marketing enterprise for about 3.5, almost 4 years, and we got a couple of big contracts in. We did good work, but essentially the model wasn't going to work. So all we did was really just sustained paying the bills, and paying ourselves, and that's essentially all that it ended up. We didn't really shift the needle or change anything, and it's tough to admit that you failed at something, but it makes you a much stronger individual, and it makes you also understand what you need to look out for, either A, in your next venture, or B, just in your next steps. What is the groundwork look like, and how do you sort of traverse this territory that you're getting into? So, but all in all, I really commend Trademark for what they do. And it's not just me. I mean, you guys are really one of those that stand out as an organization to look up to throughout the entire space in South Africa. And I've heard your name mentioned outside of the country often. So that's really, really impressive, and I'm really chuffed by what you guys do. So keep up the really good work that you guys do, man.
And no, I totally agree with that. And Yaku, just to add and comment from Laura on our chat function, reminding us that there's a session on Saturday at the Grad School of Business on studying the failure of nonprofits, like what people can learn from failure, so they can get up and improve and do it better next time.
Cool. I'll grab the details for that, and then I'll post it on our Talking Social Enterprise Facebook page. So if you guys are looking for details on that, check tomorrow, and it should be online then.
Perfect. And let's hand over to Christoph just to close the session today. Christoph, are you there? Hello? Sorry, I think... hello? I don't think we're getting Christoph, so I think it's most probably best that we just close then.
Sure. Can I just say one thing before we do close? Okay. What Josh didn't mention is that they're busy looking for an intern for the Cape Town, admin intern. We're going to be posting those details on our Facebook page too. So if you've been inspired by what they do, and you want to work with an absolutely amazing team doing absolutely amazing things, then I think it's a great opportunity for anybody trying to get into this space. So I'll post those details on our Facebook page also.
Excellent. I mean, this has been such a... And thanks. This has been such, I must say, an amazing opportunity. It's to think that we get to talk every month to the top social entrepreneurs in the country. Do you know, I mean, this is a great opportunity, and to help their voice be heard. And so thank you, Josh. Thank you, Yaku. And I'm sure... yeah, this video will be up on YouTube by tomorrow, I believe. And we'll send you the link, and anyone else who wants to listen to this or get some of your insights, they'll be able to get it there. So thank you, everyone. Good night. This has been a really great session.